So welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Weavers Guild of Minnesota annual meeting for 2021. I felt confident we'd get here, but it has been a long year. So I'm happy to see everyone and I feel like we're in a good place. So just a little bit about tonight. So we're going to, in general, we haven't muted all of you or made you unable to use your video. It is your choice. We just ask if you have some background noise to mute yourself. Please use the chat function to ask your questions. I only ask that because we have a very full presentation tonight, and that way we can kind of collect them at the end. I'll be moderating those and make sure that they are addressed. If you think of any, and that way you can send them in at any point during the meeting, you can just use the chat function. Tonight we'll hear from some board members, our education manager, and of course, I'd like to remind you that our mission is preserving and advancing the arts of weaving, spinning, and dyeing, and that the Weavers Guild of Minnesota is located on Dakota land. Our overview tonight. So first we'll hear from our board nominees for next year's board. Then Linda, our board president, will talk about their year in review and kind of give a recap. We'll then take a short break to stretch our legs, move into a spotlight on our successes from the year, and give you an opportunity to hear a little bit more of how we got there in terms of our financials and where we are moving forward. And then at the end, we'll have the best part, which is take your questions, and then we'll also have a drawing. So on behalf of the board of directors and staff, I'd like to welcome you to this next section. So we're going to meet your board officers tonight. The first person that we'll hear from is our nominee for president-elect. Each nominee will have about just a little over a minute, 60 to 75 seconds or so, to talk about themselves and give you a chance to meet them. And each slide represents something that they've made. So Beáta, let's hear from you first.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, do I look like my photo?
Yes. Yep.
Well, usually the first thing I do when I introduce myself to new people is to explain about my name. My name is unusual, and the reason there's an accent over the A is because it helps Americans understand that there's 3 syllables to my name, not just 2. So it's Beáta. My name means blessed, as in the Beatitudes in the Bible, if you are familiar with that. So if you're Italian or Spanish, Hispanic, you would understand how to pronounce it. And don't worry, I won't get upset if you don't remember or pronounce it incorrectly. I'll just remind you the correct way it happened. And I don't have a nickname. I am retired from the corporate world at General Mills. I was there for 25 years and I worked in consumer research and spent a lot of my time researching and listening to what consumers really wanted. I am a certified life coach and a licensed third age coach, which you can ask me about later. I have been practicing life coaching since 2002 approximately. I work with individuals, mostly women, some men. I also love doing small groups. I do circles like 3 or 4 times a year. I also do retreats in Minnesota and retreats in Tuscany, Italy. I've also volunteered as a life coach at an organization, nonprofit named One-to-One Women Coaching Women. It's a virtual global nonprofit, and we rely entirely on volunteer coaches to achieve our goals. It's just an amazing organization, and I've been on the leadership team at that organization. Not currently. Currently, I'm just one of the the coach mentors. I mentor other coaches within the organization. And most importantly, you probably want to know, I am a crafter, I am a knitter, I am a jewelry maker, and I am a weaver. Weaving is the thing that I've come to most recently, and that's been through the Weavers Guild. I've taken weaving classes in tapestry weaving, saori weaving, and rigid heddle. And rigid heddle is now my favorite thing. I just love it. Oh, I've made some cool things. Oh, there are my lovely placemats that go with my dishes. Um, Personally, I am married. We will be celebrating our 50th anniversary in 2 weeks. Amazing, isn't it? I'm a mom and a grandma, and I'm 100% Danish.
Great, thank you. All right, our next we'll hear from our nominee for treasurer. This would be Matt Schutz, and he is up for re-election.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt. Last name actually rhymes with Toots. It's probably the easiest way to remember it. It's Schutz. And don't worry, Karen, I get it from my boss every single day. Someone actually, I think our deed has an L in the name too. So there's no L in there, and it's Schutz. So I have that name thing too, but I usually don't correct people. I just let it go. So I've been treasurer for the Guild for the last 21 months, and it's been such a great experience so far. I've been working with not-for-profits my entire accounting career. I might look young, but I'm in my later 30s and have been in a professional work setting for about 20 years now, working with not-for-profits. And it's just been wonderful to know the Guild because I'm not a native Minnesotan. I moved here with my wife, Elizabeth, who's also a board member and also in the other room and on this phone call or Zoom call. And we moved here 5 years ago with basically, not much connecting us to the Twin Cities, but we did have family in Rochester, Minnesota. So to find such a great community that we were able to connect with, immediately Elizabeth found it, and then me just tagging along was able to get exposed to all the great benefits that the Weavers Guild and community has to offer. It was really close to where I work. I currently work for the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Med School and M Health Fairview, their joint venture. And I do finance analysis for their area for them right now. So I've been a CPA for roughly, I would say 8 or 10 years now. And I'm very technical when it comes to not-for-profit accounting. So I really get into the weeds with the accounts and work very closely with the staff in the finance committee over the 21 months or 22 months that I've been with the Guild so far. I'm a very novice weaver. I'm definitely intrigued and want to get into dyeing because I saw a lot of great I would say demonstrations, one from a prior president that used to be at the Guild, and then also some great, output that came from one of the staff. Karen showed some just incredible dyeing project that she did, and I really am intrigued. So I'd like to really get exposed to all the different aspects that the Guild has, including spinning as well. Haven't been able to get really hands-on because, of the pandemic, but as you will explain later, there's going to be some great stuff that makes it more accessible to people that haven't been able to venture out as much during this time. But I am still a maker. I work a lot with wood. When it was cheaper, we would make a lot of things. So what we're looking at right now is actually a produce holder. And I put this in our home. So we hold all of our onions, potatoes, bananas, and it's mounted to a wall. And I made this, using power tools and hand tools to make it, and then sanded and stained it and made sure. But now it actually hangs in our kitchen, and I love it. So hopefully my wife does too. Yeah, she says she loves it too. So thank you again. I'm up for renomination for the treasurer. Have a lot of exposure and professional accolades, and definitely hope to do the job again. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. Next, we will hear from our secretary nominee.
My name is Lisa Black, and I live down in Eagan, Minnesota. I have been a member of the Guild probably for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years now, so still very new in the whole weaving process. I discovered the Guild when I was looking for a place to learn how to weave, and I started out with rigid heddle weaving, which the placemat and the napkin that you see here are something that I created on my rigid heddle. My sister asked me to create something and asked if I could do those for her. I said yes. As I was walking out the door, I said, "Oh, by the way, how many of those did you need? Oh, just a dozen each." Ah, so I got a lot of practice really fast on my rigid heddle. And since then I have moved into the realm of the floor loom, which I've also been enjoying. And I really hope to also work and learn more about spinning and dyeing to learn about more facets of the Guild. Professionally, I am a project manager in the pharmaceutical industry, and I've been a project manager for probably in the 12 to 14 year range there. So I'm hoping that my skills with that will translate well into the position of secretary for the Guild, and I hope that I'm able to serve you in that manner. You know, I've learned so much from this Guild. I've enjoyed the classes. The opportunity to try out equipment before I buy things has just been invaluable. And I have so much more to learn. And I really want to help foster the community that I've found here. Everyone has been so friendly, and people are just so generous in sharing their knowledge and their time. And I want to continue to see that build in our Guild. And I hope to be able to be a part of that as we move into this kind of brave new world post-COVID, and picking up on the things that have been positive from this experience, and also going back to trying to do things more in person. So hopefully I'll get an opportunity to do that and see the Guild into the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so now we will hear from the board nominees for the at-large board positions. Each of these members would serve for 2 years. A number of them are up for re-election, as you can see on this list, and we'll hear from them in this order. So I've also learned my lesson about pronouncing people's names, so I'm just going to say, Beth, you're up next.
That was clever of you, because it's Varro and no one says it correctly, and that's fine. Hi everybody, my name is Beth Varro. That is my current foster cat, Rutherford, in the photo with me. He's the cutest thing on wheels. I have been on the board for 2 years, and it's been an interesting couple of years. There's like, you know, a few months of normal, and then COVID happened. Let's see. Okay, so professionally, I have always worked in nonprofits. I came initially from the Science Museum of Minnesota. I worked there for like 14 years and ended my time there. I was the director of the membership department for about 4 years. So having 14 years of membership experience, I think, has helped sort of inform some things for the Guild and give some best practices in industry, just sort of approach. I mean, Karen, basically listen to Karen is what I say, because she knows what she's talking about. And currently I work at NPR or at APM, American Public Media, Minnesota Public Radio, in the distribution group. So I work with stations across the country getting our programming on the air. So lots of nonprofit experience, lots of a wide variety of kinds of types of projects. With the Guild, I initially was like, I have a lot of CRM experience, which we may be able to use eventually. Dealing with how do you set up computer systems to manage all of the information about your donors and your members and all that stuff. I also joined because I love demoing and wanted to help with the outreach committee. And well, you can all imagine how that's gone in the last 2 years. So it'll be nice to have another shot at that. I initially learned to crochet when I was 8. My grandma taught me. And the picture here is a scarf that I made for my mom of hand spun. So my Guild relevant craft is spinning. I started on drop spindles and have a wheel now. I think I've been doing that for about 7 years or so. And I learned to knit because of that, because when you find out that knitting takes a lot less yarn than crocheting does, and you're making it yourself, you learn to knit very, very rapidly. So that's me.
Great, thank you. Next up, Dawn.
Hi there. My name is Dawn Severson, and I live north of the cities, kind of between Princeton and Cambridge, just off Highway 47 in the country. and I have been a member of the Guild for, I think, roughly 8-9 years now. And I recently retired a year ago, right at the beginning of COVID. I worked for 24 years at Hazelden and Betty Ford Foundation. And the last 10 years of my career there, I was the corporate controller. And I started weaving on a table loom at a retreat center in the mountains called Holden Village. And I fell in love. So I came home and ultimately got a rigid heddle. And then my daughter is very, very good friends with Kayla. And she said, well, you have to learn how to do a floor loom. So she took me under her wing and had me come down to her studio. So I have expanded now. I have a floor loom. I have my own tabletop loom. Actually, I have 2 floor looms. One that's in the house and one that's too big. So my husband gave up part of his shop so I could have my big Lamokra. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to getting back into weaving after retiring. My job just kept me from doing a whole lot. And I just thought, I love the Guild. I love everybody I meet there. And I just wanted to say, how can I help? And so that's why I decided to join or put myself up for nomination. I have 2 daughters, one that lives in Portland, Maine, and one that lives in Cambridge here. And you'll see my weaving. I took an online overshot class with Janet Dawson during COVID here because I had to get back into weaving and I needed something to spur me. So that was a runner and 2 placemats I did out of on my overshot project. And on the recliner there, I wove some fabric to cover the pillow. And that was on my newly acquired spring loom. So that's my story. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know more people at the Guild.
Great, thank you. Up next, Joe.
I'm Joe Rubin. I live in Rochester. I am a retired oncologist at Mayo and had a very nice career there. And then when I retired in December 2014, I took a class at the Guild and loved it. And now my little bio that I sent in said I had 6 looms. Well, last week I bought another. So now I have 7. I decided I needed a table loom so I could do things like the Bateman patterns. I love going to the Guild and meeting people and taking the classes, and I look forward to more interactions. On one other side, I've had an interest in the arts forever, and I collect glass and ceramic art and have a very nice collection. And if anyone wants to take a drive to Rochester and see it, you're welcome to come.
Great, thank you. We'll next hear from Mary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Mateer, and I'm an incumbent running again. I've got to say that I've been so impressed with the Guild, the volunteers, the board of directors for the past year, especially. I mean, it was really, really hard. And what Karen and Betsy and Matt, and Linda, and I mean, all of them were just phenomenal. I was busy with my public defending and where my caseload tripled, literally. And so I feel horrible that I wasn't able to devote as much time to some of the other committees that I would have liked to, which is one of the reasons I wanted to run again, because I am hoping to retire sooner than I had originally planned, partly because I want to get involved at Applied Dyed and Woven, because I think that's such an important aspect, and hopefully I can get more involved with that. I'm a former whitewater kayaker who taught for many years. That was my sanity from away from being a public defender. And then when I got injured, I had to find something else. So I started weaving, having come from being a knitter. And I've served on several boards, but all involving the legal world. I can't talk enough about the spectacular membership that we've got, the dedication of the volunteers. It's just phenomenal. My strengths are I'm a good networker. I love to fix things, especially looms. I'm good at outreach, multitasking, and negotiating since I'm a lawyer. So I really hope that I can continue on. The blanket is won second place at the state fair. And I was never so proud to receive an award because first place was Kayla. And to come in behind Kayla, I was just blown away and appreciative. Now the scarf was from the unauction that I'm wearing. It's my sister's. I bought it. She actually bid on it and bought it. But so I had to mail it to her. So for that whole week after an auction, I wore it in Zoom court. So I can't remember who the weaver was, but it's a beautiful scarf. So that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think it's Lucy Brusick. Maybe?
That's who it was, Lucy. Yeah, yeah.
Great. And then let's hear from Cass.
Hi, I'm Cass Markovich, and I started weaving in the 70s. And the picture on the right is the first thing I ever wove. It was a poncho, and it is now 49 years old. I am a rigid heddle weaver. I actually, in the 70s, I started and I became a member of the Weavers Guild, but then I went over internationally to Shanghai, China. I'm an educator and a consultant, and I also helped start a school for special needs in Shanghai. When we returned to the States and other locations in 2017, we moved back to the cities. And I decided I loved weaving. I wanted to reconnect, but I also wanted to reconnect to the weaver world. It's an essential, I think, part of the community. It offers educational classes, it offers resources, but mainly it offers that companionship with other weavers so that you can both learn from the well-established and experienced weavers and also get a lot of innovation and ideas from the new weavers. So I really appreciate being asked to apply to be a board member, but whether I'm a board member or not, I'm going to volunteer more at the Weavers Guild because I do think it's an essential part of the community. And I want to give back to all that they've given me during this pandemic year and even before that. So I thank you, and I look forward to meeting you all.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Barb.
Hi, my name is Barbara Heath, and I've been weaving, 36 years or so. I saw Nan Miller made these little jackets decades ago. She's since moved away. And I told my husband, oh, if I had a loom, I could do that. And within a week, he had gone down to Depth of Field and bought me a loom. And I've taught at Depth of Field for 20 years or better. And then I've also shared a studio with another guild member, Nidra Granquist. She passed away last year, about a year ago. And we had a 10-foot wide loom in the Northrop King building, and we did large rugs. And we don't really remember how long we did that, but we think it might be 17 years. When you get our age, you kind of forget things. And Mary Mateer that just spoke to you a couple nominees ago, and I purchased all the looms from Depth of Field after they decided to retire. And we found a space here in the Seward neighborhood of Minneapolis and took all the students with and started a little collective. And we've been doing that for over 2 years now. And we, split up the rent and everybody weaves, and we tried, well, before COVID, we got together every Wednesday evening, which was the same night that we had class. And we weave, and everybody has keys. They can go down and weave anytime they want. And it's really fun to go in there and walk up and down our little aisles and see what people are doing. It's really fun. And it means a lot to me too, because I taught them how to weave. So it's weaving is just great. I love it. And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Our next nominee couldn't be here tonight. So we're at the close of the nominee section. I'd just like to remind you all to vote. You've received a ballot electronically. It was in a separate email, but it was also in the draft and in the reminder for tonight. The vote will close Sunday at midnight. And Barb, this is especially apt for you. This is woven from Nidra's stash. It's
That's
the,
wonderful.
yeah, so it's the projects that the Reg Study Group
Yeah.
wove with Nidra's
I
the
know
supplies
those
that she didn't
rags.
get to. Absolutely. So at this point in the night, we will now move to Linda talking about our year in review. Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks to all the nominees. I'm so incredibly grateful for your willingness to throw your hat in the ring and to give back to the Guild. I mean, everybody's stories are so interesting, and I think the running theme is that the Guild is meaningful to many of us, and that's why we do what we do. So thank you. I really appreciate the offer of service. So we're going to talk about our year in review, and you'll see sort of peppered throughout the presentation quotes. These are quotes that Karen and Betsy have gathered over the year from members and participants in programs to just reinforce what the Guild means to each of these individuals. So I invite you to take a read of them, because you read them all and you start to feel pretty darn good about what we do as an organization. So if we can go to the next slide. I think it's almost hard to remember, but I think context is really important. If you roll back a year ago, and actually it was a little less than a year ago because our member meeting, our annual meeting was in June. You know, what were we facing? We were 2 months into the pandemic. No one really knew what to expect. And there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of concern about what was the world going to turn into. We also had the racial reckoning with the devastating murder of George Floyd. So that obviously racked our community. And as a board, we sat down under Celeste's leadership, and Celeste often says, you know, she was the pandemic president. She was. She inherited this thing. And under her leadership, we had to ask ourselves some questions about basic questions, because at the time, nothing was obvious, nothing was clear. But we did know first and foremost that ensuring the safety of staff members and instructors was at the forefront. No matter what we did, we had to ensure that our stakeholders and the folks that mean so much to us were safe. Now, to a certain extent, the governor made that easy in the sense that everything was shut down, but we made a commitment that it would be engagement only until we could do otherwise safely. We asked ourselves, how do we make payroll and rent? If we can't hold in-person classes, if FiberSource is closed, which this was, you know, where we were at a year ago, how do we pay our bills? We're fortunate, we have some cash in the bank, so that's a good thing. But under Matt's leadership, we quickly pursued the PPP forgivable loan. That proved to be invaluable to get us through the toughest times of the pandemic. Then we asked, how do we operate, or do we operate virtually? We didn't even know if we could. I distinctly remember Betsy saying, you know, we could get a Zoom account. Nobody knew what Zoom was a year ago. Of course, we are now fully familiar. But back then we didn't. We said, how do we provide value to members? You know, are we offering anything to members? Should we even ask them to pay for a membership dues? Because what is it that we could offer? We said, you know what? We can do stuff digitally. And then the last question, and this really was top of mind really for the first several months, is do we just shut down operations entirely? Because we didn't know what money we'd have coming in. But at the end of the day, we said, nope, we're not shutting. We want to retain our staff. We want to continue to serve our members. And so we committed to staying open virtually. Next slide, please. So those of you who attended the listening session back in October, you will have remembered this. These are just a quick little snapshot of the types of things we did early on to sort of get our footing, to try to figure out our new environment and our new life. So you can see we had Zoom, we did FiberSource with curbside pickup. Karen spent countless hours setting up the curbside pickup system. That was invaluable. Our members appreciated it. In July, we had our first digital class. That's a big deal. Betsy worked with instructors to make that happen. And importantly, recognizing that as a community, as a state, we need to do much better with racial equity. We formally amended the bylaws to include that we will have a permanent standing committee devoted to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was a big, important step for the Guild. Next slide, please. So how do we think about the year? It was an incredible year. And I think as you see the numbers that Matt goes through, we never in our wildest dreams could have imagined where we are today. And that's thanks to all of you, our members, our staff, faculty, volunteers, interest groups, donors, board, committee. Everybody decided to step up and support the Guild in unprecedented ways. And for that, we're deeply, deeply grateful. Our members were willing to engage with us. We didn't kind of know what we were doing. We were just saying, okay, this is going to be a year of experimentation. Let's try stuff out. And rather than taking a critical eye, you all gave us the benefit of the doubt, and you came along with us as we were trying to figure things out. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about some of the specific things. At the end of the day, as I think about what we've done, I think the most notable is we've built a virtual community. And what this has allowed us to do is connect with people in the Twin Cities, which is wonderful. But we've been able to expand our network, not only within Minnesota, but within the country, and in fact, even internationally. So we've been able to expand our reach through the use of digital. And that's frankly really exciting because we've got to know people we otherwise would never have gotten to know. Next slide. So here's how I'd characterize where we are. We're vibrant and we're moving forward. We've learned some stuff and we're going to leverage that going forward. We weren't sure, but through our activities in the last year, we've been able to create opportunities for our community beyond our physical space. We've always had, a physical space to convene around. And what we've seen in the last year is, yes, we love our space and my goodness, we want to get back there. We've been able to establish connections virtually that tells us that our members want to connect in any way they can. We've been innovating. When you hear from Betsy about all of the work that she and the instructors have put into innovating how weaving and spinning is taught virtually, it's absolutely phenomenal. It was a blank slate. We started from a base of never having done it, and look where we are today. I mean, it's just so exciting to see what that group has been able to do. We held our first online silent auction under Amanda Anderson and Kathy Mayer's leadership. They said, what if? Could we do this? And it started with a question, and magic happened, and we had an amazing event. Then the last thing I'll highlight is, this is Karen's brainchild. Back in the fall, when we said, how are we going to raise funds? It was Karen who said, you know what? I think member stories will resonate and really bring to life why the Guild's so important, so that people know how critically important the Guild is to its members. And it paid dividends, and you'll see that in a second. So if we go to the next slide. So we had a listening session back in October, and you can see bullets below. I'm not going to go through them other than to say we thought it was really important at the outset. And the neat thing about the Guild is we have a history of asking our members about their views on things. We thought, you know what, let's check in fairly early to kind of take the temperature before we were running down the path. And one thing I will note that to a person we heard from the participants in the listening session, they expressed a deep, deep appreciation of staff and faculty, and they wanted us to do everything possible to make sure we retain them. We heard that loud and clear. The second one was, let's be careful with our finances. We know things are precarious. Let's make sure we're fiscally responsible as we set about our year of experimentation. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see what we did to sort of ensure our financial health. I have already mentioned Paycheck Protection Program. What's interesting is round one actually ran out. And because Matt was so diligent, and it was not an easy process, we actually got in under the wire, we got the loan. We got a second loan, and they're both forgivable, and so that's wonderful. We did pursue existing and new grants. So Anna Londa's Ben's and the development committee on day one of the fiscal said, look, we're going to have to do things differently. We're going to go after new and existing grants because we know we're going to have to cover shortfall from the inability to hold in-person classes. Talked about the fall fundraiser. We developed online programs, and then we pursued fiber store sales of new and donated items. This was not easy. Trying to, manage getting people in the door in a very safe and protected way, getting donated items in, getting them valued. That took a Herculean effort. As you will see from the financials, it paid off big time. The funds that we drove from that program of donated items and managing them were significant. Next slide. So telling our story of success, as I said, this was Karen's brainchild, and we had an audacious goal of 35,000, and it was audacious because in the average year, for an entire year of fundraising, we would get $25,000. So we said, let's think big. We thought big. We shot for 35. We ended up with 45,000. Our board of directors is a deeply committed board. Not only was there 100% participation, there was matching up to $8,500. That really made a significant difference in us not only hitting our goal, but exceeding it. Next slide. So fundraising has lots of different buckets. So if you go down to the bottom, what you'll see is in this fiscal year, we have raised $93,000. That's the highest fundraising we've done in the past decade. And you'd say, well, you kind of need it to because it's a pandemic. We've never faced this. But you look at the fall fundraiser, you look at the unauctioned, way over what the projected revenue from that. So they did a phenomenal job. Other cash donations, and then look at this line of in-kind donations through the shop, $27,000. Think about the woman hours and man hours required to intake those donated items, value them, put them on display, process the sales, all in the environment where you have to have the textile center system getting in. Karen and others have to be in the building to facilitate that. That is absolutely phenomenal. And I think I can say we did it in a very safe way, consistent with the standards that our state had set out. So this is just a pleasure to look at. So if you go to the next slide, this just is a picture of what I just said. You can just see the magnitude of what fundraising did for us this year versus prior years. Yes, it's a truly unique year. It's also a year, though, where many had significant financial constraints. So the fact that our members, despite financial constraints, came forward and gave to us just shows the spirit and generosity that our members have. It's just, I'm so deeply grateful. So the next slide, I think, okay, the annual auction. As I said, Amanda Anderson, had this wacky idea. Gosh, wouldn't it be cool if? And the first conversations were, it's going to be hard, and we've never done it, on. And through Amanda's tenacity, she said, no, I actually think we can do it. She worked with the PDW committee, and they did an amazing thing. We not only wanted to raise money for operations, but we wanted to test the appetite for online sales, to look at what does the demand look like, what do the logistics look like. So the learnings here are truly valuable, and they will be applied as we think future-wise in terms of how we do sales in the future. So this was an experiment that, oh, by the way, was an unbelievable success. And we made important funds and dollars to support our operations. So thank you to Amanda and the full team for that. Next slide. This just gives you some snapshot of the some key data points. We had 50 donors, 129 donated items, bidders, net income, 74 winners. So this was not a matter of a couple people putting in some things. We had 129 handcrafted items that were generously donated by our members and others. So it was just, I was astounded at the level of beauty and commitment that our members came forward with. I mean, the items were just spectacular. Next slide. Grants. So as I said, you can see here we had a total of $85,000 in grants. The asterisk grants are ones that were new. So as I said, Anna and the development committee, figured out pretty early on that we would have to rely on grants. And so they went about the work of doing new grants. And for those of you who know anything about grant making, it is extremely time consuming. Every grant application takes a huge amount of effort. And so a big thanks to the development committee for the work done in securing grants. Next slide. And here you can see another chart of how the grants have flown over the years or flowed over the years. You can see 2015 was a big year, but we eked out a little bit over 2015 and 21, which is just outstanding. All right, Karen, over to you.
This is my chance to offer you a break. So since we've just bombarded you with all of that amazing good news, we're going to take a couple minutes here. So we will reconvene at 6:25 promptly, everyone, at 6:25, and move to the next point of our thing. So take a minute, stretch, and we will see you then.
Oh, freezing.
Excuse me. Gesundheit. Thank you.
All right, team. I'm weirdly punctual and my phone says 6:25, so it's happening. All right, for our next section, we will highlight some successes from this year, including hearing from Betsy Canup, our education manager.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar faces and also some new faces. I'm going to give a brief overview of what we've been working on in the digital education realm, which has been pretty exciting. And boy, oh boy, a year and a half ago, we had no idea we would be in this place today. So I wanted to start with where we initially kicked off a little over a year ago. We acknowledged that we were not going to be in the classrooms anytime soon. Even I think as late as July last year, we were still holding out hope that we might be back in the classrooms in fall 2020. And of course that has not happened. And we only got back into the classrooms this last Saturday for in-person classes. So we started by thinking, what are the goals for digital programming? What are the things that we really want to accomplish? What are the things that we've heard from students and members and instructors about what they really value about our programming? And so the two goals that we were really pursuing were to create opportunities for connection. So our students and members were missing being in communion with other fiber arts lovers and makers. And then as well, our instructors were really missing connecting with students. So we wanted to make sure that we were taking both student to student connection in mind, as well as faculty to student connection in mind. And we wanted to make sure that we were serving both the learning and artistic needs of our community in that. So as Linda mentioned earlier, we approached this year as a year of experimentation. We were going to try a few things and see what stuck and see what people wanted more of, and hopefully didn't encounter anybody wanting less of anything. So we started with some simple classes. Some members on our education committee said, you know what, I think I can get X, Y, and Z classes up and going. And so within a couple of months, we had 3 classes on the books. Donna had a couple drafting classes, and Heather McKenzie offered a triple cloth class online. And they went pretty well. And with that, we got a little confidence under our wings. And we had a faculty meeting where we shared some of our initial learnings and encouraged other faculty to hop on board. And Trouty Bessler said, you know what, this sounds pretty fun. I think I'm gonna give it a try as well. And also Connie Latendris was like, you know, there are so many people out there that wanna try rigid heddle weaving. I think I can give this a try as well. So our engine started to churn. And then we started adding in a few workshops. We got recommendations and notifications from members and from our faculty that there were some really amazing nationwide or national teaching artists who were starting to dip their toe into teaching online. And so we tapped into some of them. We also offered artist talks, some of which were with the same workshop instructors, and some were just folks who were doing interesting work and we wanted to spotlight their work. We ran a studio tours program in our newsletter. We also, which was in part done through the thinking and efforts of our outreach committee. Karin kicked off a book club with Mary Skoy. Connie Latendris said, you know what, we've got all these people out there who are buying used Becca looms from our shop, and we don't offer any way for them to learn how to use those looms. So she created an on-demand class, which was the first that we've ever offered. And then we had a virtual visiting artist residency with Molly Elkin, the tapestry weaver. We said, you know what, since we don't have to cover travel costs, and Molly can teach from her home in Santa Fe, maybe we can elongate the amount of time and number of classes that Molly can teach, thereby allowing our students to really build a relationship with a national teaching artist, something that they don't get to do when an artist has to fly in for a weekend and then fly home after a few days. So that we came through this with a lot of learnings, and I'll talk a little bit about those next. But before moving on, I really wanted to highlight who some of the heavy lifters in this work, starting with Roberta Zoig-Schell, our previous education committee chair, and Heather McKenzie, our new education committee chair. They were really my co-pilots in driving this effort, and really worked deeply with me to think through some of the pitfalls and some of the benefits of doing this work, and continuing to power through and make the case that this is the effort that where we needed to be putting our efforts. The education committee was tremendous in thinking through many of the details, what resources we needed to be able to offer this, the timeline that we needed, how we could support our faculty, and the outcomes that we wanted to provide for our students. Part-time staff member Ever Woodward was a tremendous help with technology assistance. Many of you who have taken a class over the last year online have encountered Ever before a class, helping you navigate the ins and outs of Zoom, of which we are now all pros. And for some of us, that's thanks to Ever's help. Melba Granlund, a faculty, a board member, and chair of the outreach committee, was really supportive in thinking about how we could engage people digitally in a year where we had to pause all offsite outreach programs. And from our conversations with Melba and the outreach committee, Studio Tours was born. And then Robbie LaFleur organized 2 talks, one of which she gave, focusing on the work of 2 really fantastic tapestry weavers. And then I wanted to highlight, the folks who really stepped up to actually lead the programs, in addition to doing the behind the scenes work. Donna Hansen, Connie Latendris, Trouty Bessler, our faculty who led the initial digital classes. Robbie LaFleur, as I mentioned, who led a tapestry talk. Mary Scoy, who worked so closely with Karin to offer the book club, and then Heather McKenzie, who led our very first online class. We were very surprised with the reach of our online programs. Very quickly, we were having participants from outside of the Twin Cities, and then shortly after that, we were seeing participants from across the country. It wasn't long into offering online classes that Donna Hansen reported that she had a student from the Northeast, the Southeast, the Northwest, and the Southwest, and then here in Minnesota. So we were covering the continent through our digital classes and connecting folks during a time where we were feeling pretty isolated. We've also seen a slight increase in younger folks participating because our classes are now more accessible. We've heard people report that before it was too difficult to arrange childcare, but now that they can learn from home, they're able to access our content. We're also seeing a slight bump in racial diversity, which of course we have more work to do in that arena, but we found that this type of programming is helpful in terms of reaching folks that we haven't done a great job of reaching out to in the past. And then just to wrap it up, we are kicking off our return to in-person classes this summer with a few returning favorites as well as a few new classes. And we are also continuing to offer select digital classes. And then in winter, we will ramp up our in-person classes because we expect increased demand. And we will also increase the number of digital classes we offer again in winter because that's where we see more demand. And we will bring back digital workshops and artist talks. Those are on pause for summer. And then beyond looking into the next fiscal year, we will pick up a partnership with Interact Center for the Performing and Visual Arts. We had received a grant about a month after our closure due to COVID. So that partnership was put on pause, but it's a 6-month-long weaving intensive for artists with disabilities. And our faculty is partnering with their new fiber arts program to allow their artists to take a deep dive into the art of weaving. We will continue to experiment. We will look at what other organizations are doing with their programming and try to bring that to our members the best that we can. We will continue to onboard additional faculty now that we have a wider reach with our digital programming. We now are able to work with faculty across the country and internationally, which is very exciting. And we will be able, we will increase the promotion of our program now that we're seeing folks interested beyond the Twin Cities and starting to see folks interested beyond the continental US. We can start to pursue other avenues of promoting the Guild and our programs. So with that, I will turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Betsy. So I don't mean to glaze everyone over, but when we talk about finances, you have to look at numbers. But I'm going to try to do my hardest to put it into some context that will make a lot of sense for everyone. We're going to be looking at 4 different fiscal years, and our fiscal year runs from September 1st to August 30th, or August 31st, just so everyone is aware of where our imaginary line falls. But we can go back in time and kind of think of this as like our normal years, and then what we're currently in or looking forward to is going to be that new normal, right? You hear these buzzwords, but our normal years, so back when I first started as treasurer, we typically would have break-even budgets. And, you know, we're right around an operating budget of $350,000. So we would be break even, which means that our net income would we would, you know, get revenue in, we would say, yep, and we're going to spend it all on the programs, the staff, the occupancy, and all the related expenses. So we wouldn't retain much profit based on the budgeting that we did. But as you know, we haven't been in normal years or for the last 2 years, or even last 4, if you want to count that. But the main thing here is that there are a lot of main events that happened. And to put it in context of finances, it's just, I'm going to try to point that out to you as clear as I can be. So there's going to be 2 slides that we look at, this one here, and then the next one, which kind of paint the picture in a little bit more of a graphical form versus words. But here we can go through and just talk about what happened. So after that imaginary line, we had September. We were, you know, business as usual. Everything was great. We had our fall classes all lined up. Everyone attended. And no one knew about, this is the pandemic. I guess we didn't even catch wind, so to speak, about this until roughly December or January. So we kind of had a first quarter full of like a normal year. But after that, we definitely had a lot of things start happening, and very fast. Right around February timeframe, we got, and I don't mean to, you know, reiterate this for everyone that might have some stress due to this, but we had mandatory closures by the governor, which means that, you know, we could not hold classes and we could not sell inventory in our store. So we had to cancel a lot of those classes that were already scheduled, already paid in full, and we issued refunds, full refunds to a lot of individuals. Grants and contributions weren't a focus at this time, but we were kind of like, you know, obviously in a preparation mode, not necessarily a panic mode, but obviously a lot of people were, though, because it's a pandemic. We didn't really have much opportunities in front of us because no one knew the future at this time. But what we were able to do is really shift our focus. So if we're not bringing in money for the Guild through classes and inventory sales and that type of method of bringing in revenue sources, how else can we, you know, reach out to our community to make sure that the Guild doesn't completely, you know, collapse, right? So we definitely did seek out a lot of opportunities. One of them, Linda already mentioned, was this great Small Business Association grant or forgivable loan that was available to a lot of not-for-profits, actually a lot of just sole proprietors as well, not necessarily not-for-profits. We were last in line, to speak frankly, but we did get it. So we sought out that program, and that was very beneficial for us to kind of like allow us to plan. We got this money, and it kind of settled us down because it was enough to pay for 2.5 months worth of fixed expenses, basically, that the guild was incurring. So we know that we didn't have money coming in the door from classes, and we just issued a lot of refunds. So we didn't want our cash to get depleted. And so that was kind of a very big, deep breath moment for us. That allowed us to then shift our focus. Development committee really stepped up, and then our community really stepped up, and membership with the contributions focus. So we'll kind of get into that when you see the graphs on the next page. But just to put it into perspective, our budget, our operating budget shrank by roughly 20%. So that's huge. We went from, normally incurring $315,000 of expenses and getting that amount of revenue to literally getting like roughly around $250,000 for this fiscal year, and not ending up with a net loss even on top of that. So less revenue came in the door than we were expecting. And we kind of, without the benefit of the PPP at this moment, we were looking at a pretty dire situation. This did give us the great opportunity. Obviously, crisis causes opportunities. So we, as Betsy was stating, had an opportunity to do pilot programs. So if we shift over then to the new fiscal year, this is our projected area. So you can kind of see we're looking greener. We're still in a pandemic. There are closures. The textile center is not open 24/7. It's not, we are kind of tied to their timeline. We have other special agreements, but we're not open, as we used to be. So we're not really back to normal. So we still have part-time store reopenings and for schedule or curbside pickups, and we're still doing that. And we piloted the digital programs. So now we actually have another tool in our belt where we can leverage in the future once we have in-person going, and then also on-demand classes, and then online classes that could be live as well. Maybe from, if weather gets bad, or, whatever, what have you in the future that could happen, not another pandemic, God forbid. But it would just be that we have this capability because we've already invested so much money to do these rollouts. We're also having a new strategic plan, I believe that is mentioned as well. And that's going to be really critical in this next step of our growth here at the Guild. When you take all that into context, and we also got another paycheck protection program. I can't say that either, Linda. And that alliteration means that we got another deep breath to just take a step back and say, okay, great, we can use these funds to allocate to our full-time staff, to retain them so that they can do the great things that'll keep the Guild afloat. So taking a look at these numbers, now we're up from the prior year. So that's great. So we're better than where we were. So we know that we didn't go farther down, right? And we're growing back, but we're still not to the new normal, or the normal that we wanted to be at where we were a couple of years ago. But we earned a sizable net income, and we're projected to have a roughly $48,000 forecasted net income by the end of the year, based on budgeted projections for the next 3 months. We're looking very good, and we're actually in a place where we can recoup the losses that we had from the prior year. So that's a great place to be in. We can go on to the next slide, and this will kind of show it in more of a graphical form. So hopefully everyone can see the colors. And I just want to point out a few things. So each graph is kind of showing our revenue streams. So if you're looking at a purple graph of bars, there's the 4 years there. So that would be the 2 on the left are those normal years we just talked about. The 2 on the right are not our normal years. That's where COVID hit, and that's where we currently are. So if you're looking at tuition and events and programs, you can see that's where a lot of our revenue came from in fiscal 18 and fiscal 19. Due to those mandatory closures, and due to having to switch to online programs or piloted programs for digital, and not being able to offer the more in-person classes that we used to in the past, that particular portion of our revenue stream has definitely gone down. Our dues actually have been kind of held, flat, which is great. We didn't really lose much membership here. And that's a really good thing to point out. We were kind of worried about maybe 10 to 15 months ago of what are we going to do, if half of our members leave, but they haven't. And it's shown that we've actually retained a good percentage of our membership. Contributions, you can see, have been consistent for the last 3 fiscal years, but this was a significant effort in this last fiscal year. The fall ask and the fall donation, you can just see that it just goes above and beyond of the normal years and the year before, last year. A new revenue stream came across in the last years. This won't stick around, obviously, forever, but I just wanted to point out that we've never received anything from for a paycheck protection program in that shape or form. So that's just something that's new. It's not going to be there forever, but it was a revenue stream that we did get. You can also see the theme going for the shift of focus to grants. We talked about this in a prior slide, but in the past we've kind of had a sizable amount of grants that would give us a good subsidized nature for running programs and paying for our full-time fixed expenses. But this year we actually did a great effort to recoup a lot of the losses that we had from classes that were being offered, where that was kind of our big, and you can see also in the net sales area, it's the same thing. Same theme. We closed the store, we stopped offering classes in the amount that we used to, and we had to shift our focus. So if you can kind of see where those focuses were shifted, that's what this graph representation is showing. And then briefly, the bottom graph is kind of showing a cumulative net income of what was happening during this time. So I kind of talked about it before. So if you look from the left, and we're looking at this little line that's going around. So this is the story of the last 2 years. We started the year out fine. We had, we usually get a sizable amount of our income in the fall and winter months, which was actually a really good thing that the pandemic didn't hit at that point, because that's like literally that's the time that we kind of do a lot of our business is the fall semester. But you can really kind of see the theme here of what's happening as soon as the pandemic hit. So that would be the first little red box there. Immediately we had to issue a lot of refunds. So our cumulative net income is immediately dropping. And actually it dropped so far that we've, in first time in a long time, had a 5-digit net loss. And we haven't had that in a long time in the guilds since I've been around, and from the historical records I've been looking through. And then you can kind of see the amount of efforts that we've done in the fall fundraising campaign, the new grants that we've received, and it just skyrocketed us into a nice, beautiful, comfortable place to be in this, where we almost are today. So that ask and all those grants that we received now, through the second quarter, propelled us to have such a very comfortable place for our reserves to be, where now we can, settle our nerves for, at least I can, and really truly focus on, future of the guild. We've invested in our new strategic plan. We've rolled out digital classes, like we said before, and so on. So we're still continuing to lower down, but that's a trend that's normal. So we don't receive as many grants in the second half of the year because we received them in the first half, and we're not going to be asking members for contributions throughout the summer. So those are just projected steady losses for the remainder of the year. But as you can see, we'll be projected to end the year positively, and that's what this graph is representing. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. If you have questions, though, feel free to ask in the comments section or in the chat, and I can answer them maybe in the Q&A section, okay?
Perfect, great. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
And we'll return to Linda for the next section here.
Yeah, so thanks, Matt, for that thorough recap of the financials. I think it's important for us to understand the financials just to understand sort of what we're dealing with historically and today, because it shapes our future. So, we're not sitting back saying, gosh, we're feeling good about things. Let's just kind of let the year flow through. If you can turn to the next slide, what we decided to do is back in late 2019 and into 2020, we had said, we're going to go through a strategic planning process because our prior strategic plan expired in 2020. So we were all set to go, but then, as we know, COVID hit. We put the brakes on strategic planning for really a couple of reasons. It would have been a significant cash outlay. And also with the world upside down, we said, you know what, maybe we should pause and do it at a more opportune time. So what we did was, back in the fall, we said we're going to extend the 2020 strategic plan for a year so that we have a guiding light for this year. But let's look at where we are in the spring, and if we're able, we'll pick it up again. The good news is, because we are financially sound, we said, you know what, we're not going to just rest on our laurels. We're going to now turn our attention to strategic planning so that we can chart our future through this process. And because we've just come off of a year of experimentation and the world has changed, it's kind of the perfect time. It's actually a gift. Had we done it in the fall of 2019, everything would have been, the world would have moved on. So I think pausing was really a good call that the board made earlier in the year. So we're setting about the business of strategic planning as we speak. So if you turn to the next slide, just a quick update on where we are and what you can expect. So for those of you who haven't gone strategic planning, put simply, strategic planning is about setting priorities. We have our mission. The question is, how as an organization do we achieve our mission? And you do it by setting priorities. If you think about the Guild, and the Guild's no different than any other organization, in any given year, we have a laundry list of maybe 10, 15 things we'd all love to do. Wouldn't it be great if we could do X, Y, Z? We have limited resources at the Guild, and we can't ever get after everything on our wish list. So strategic planning helps us look at what the wish list is. It tells us where we're trying to go and what are the things resource-wise and efforts will take us where we want to go. The things that we can't address is just sort of the reality of living in a time of limited resources. So think of strategic planning as prioritizing and allocating our limited resources to our most important efforts in coming years. So that's how I would describe what strategic planning is. So if you move to the next slide, we retained DeYoung Consulting, actually way back when we went through a full RFP process, and we were ready to actually sign the contract. COVID hit, we put everything on hold. We went back to DeYoung a month ago and said, A, can you still help us? And B, can you do it remotely? Because we were still in a virtual environment. They said, absolutely, yes, we'd love to help you. We picked DeYoung in particular because of how they go after strategic planning. There's lots of different ways to do it, but at the end of the day, what they do is they really look to have authentic engagement with key stakeholders. The Guild is a member organization, so how best to do a strategic plan than to engage our members. And so we're going to be doing that, and we're going to have inclusive participation in the coming weeks. So if you turn to the next slide, I'm just going to lay out very quickly what it is we're doing. So just know that there's a strategic planning committee, and it is under the executive committee, and the board are overseeing the strategic planning committee. So from a governance standpoint, we're good. There's lots of checks and balances, so nobody can run off and do crazy stuff. So the process is as you can see, so there's going to be certain stakeholder interviews where DeYoung is going to reach out and chat with folks. We're also going to do a member survey. So if you see a survey come through, and I'm not sure how we're going to communicate it, it might be a direct email, it might come through the draft, more to come on that. If you have a point of view, please share it. We welcome all points of view because, as I said, this is a member organization. We want the strategic plan to reflect what the organization wants. We're going to analyze the feedback. We're going to do an environmental scan. So let's look at the world. What has changed? Who's doing it really well? And sort of you throw it all into the pot. And then from that, you extrapolate a set of priorities and goals. We will use the strategic plan to form our annual plan in our next fiscal year. So this is going to be tight. We're going to do this by the end of August. And then in September, we're going to make sure and set our annual plan if we're able to, so that we have what are our top priorities in a really what's going to be a transition year. And then we're going to do some ongoing measurement. It's not going to be a document that sits in a drawer This is going to be a living thing that the board and the members measure us against to make sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do. The one thing I will say, which I think DeYoung really distinguished themselves by, is the way they think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's actually embedded in the strategic planning process. So as we mentioned earlier, we have a committee that is focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our strategic planning process is going to have a lens of DEI. So everything we do, everything we think about will have DEI integrated into it so that it's not a separate thing. It actually becomes part of our DNA. And we thought that was particularly compelling and important for our organization. So I think that's everything. Oh, moving forward, I'll just hit this quickly because we're running out of time. We are returning to in-person program. We've already started that. You heard Betsy talk about it. That is so exciting. Oh my goodness. I think we're all so collectively to chase in the building and get into the building. Just know in terms of building access and all that sort of thing, the executive committee and staff are working to set a process to allow interest groups in and others. Just what I would ask is give us a month or so to really kind of work through what does bringing the physical operation back to life look like. We want to do so thoughtfully and with the safety of all of us in mind. So that's a work in progress. So just know that's happening. We're leveraging our learning. As I said, the strategic planning, we will have all these learnings from this year of experimentation as we think about strategic planning. It's a changed world. And so we're going to do things differently. I can imagine what we'll end up doing. And Betsy suggested this. We're going to do digital programming. We're going to do in-person program. We might well have hybrid programming. So all sorts of things to leverage what we've learned will take place in coming years. And we really do think we have a bigger future. If you think about our footprint today, we've really expanded both within Minnesota and within the country. And that to me is really exciting. So I think there's a lot for us to be excited about in the future. And I think we've got one more slide here. And that's a thank you. So thank you to everybody. I hope all of you feel like we've acknowledged you and all of the work you've done and all of the generosity you've provided to us. So thank you again. We couldn't have done it without all of you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karin.
Karin would have to start her video and unmute herself. Okay, so we're short on minutes, but I know you all are invested to be here, so just hold tight. So some of the questions that came through is someone had asked about the connection opportunities. You know, where do the interest groups fall? And I'm going to go ahead and take this one, since interest groups, I like to think, fall under membership, even though it also falls under learning, and really they're pretty core and integral to our guild. One of the things that I would say, the consequence of having such a successful year in so many other fields, in fundraising, in digital programming, in securing all these grants, is that we couldn't talk about everything that we need to talk about in this presentation, which is why I included so many quotes directly talking about the impact of the interest groups, because we know how important it has been to our members. And I know because I see the members thank each other in the groups.io chat saying this has been great. Last fall, we had an interest in study group mixer, which was really successful, or at least I thought it was really successful and fun. So I'll reach out to the groups to see if they're interested in doing something like that again, just to kind of catch us up on what they've been doing. There's also a couple exhibits that will be planned for the walls of the guild so that we can highlight the great work that people have been doing. And if you have other ideas and other things, you can reach out to me. So yeah, I would just say that a related question about the interest groups is, and I'm going to ask Betsy because she knows technology and I do not. Members have been asking, because the interest groups are so valuable to them, about the possibility of hybrid interest group meetings. And I'm guessing they mean hybrid, you know, they meet in person, but maybe they have some virtual attendees. Betsy, would you like to take a shot at that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you know, as the questioner asks, and as Linda mentioned, there are some other organizations that are doing hybrid models, and actually one of our instructors is going to take a class and bring back some intel. But we received a grant from the Smith Family Foundation last winter that allowed us to purchase some video equipment. And we have been experimenting with live streaming a class from the Guild, also doing some research into how we can utilize Zoom to use multiple cameras during one Zoom meeting so that we can really showcase demonstrations or other work, or live stream member meetings from the Guild, and also allow folks to participate from the comfort of their own home, whether they're in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, or across the country. And as I'm doing my research and I'm compiling my learnings and I'm creating some guides on how to do this from a technical perspective, I am happy to share my learnings with any interest group or interest group leader that is interested to learn more about this. And if there is a sizable amount of folks that are interested in learning how to facilitate interest group meetings in a hybrid way, then I would be happy to offer a training session on how to do the technology piece in a way where those who are participating virtually feel like they're having as meaningful of an experience as those who are in the room.
Sounds amazing. I'm going to read a couple comments that came through the chat, and this is related. It says, I can't say enough in praise of the support from Betsy in ever planning my online class. So when Betsy says she's going to give you support, she really means it. So, and that's directly from one of our instructors who's been teaching online. Another person said, I like the ability to attend virtually. And I think as I ate my dinner in our quick break, I kind of like it too sometimes. Another question came through about, what's the plan for the return of the monthly member meetings? So since membership kind of falls under my umbrella, I'll speak to this a little bit. I'll mention that the next member meeting will be in June, for the book club, where we read A Perfect Read, and all of you are welcome to read the book and attend. But I'm guessing that this person is partly asking, when can we have a meeting in person? Because those are the questions that I get from people in the shop. So correct me if I'm wrong, Arlene, but I suspect that's what you mean. And what I will say is that we are working kind of in coordination with the Textile Center, and we're sort of waiting on some building restrictions and a change in capacity and restrictions before we can do that. I know that they have made some investments in their equipment and in their air system and some other things to kind of facilitate meetings in person and make sure that everybody can hear and that they're a good experience. But of course, we're kind of, we're sort of waiting for that to happen, because until then, auditorium rental has sort of been suspended for a while. So as soon as we hear from them exactly what will happen, we'll have more information about when we can start. In the meantime, we'll continue to have member meetings virtually, and we'll continue to look forward to kind of new ways to innovate. We had that meeting last February or a year ago, or just 2 months ago, but I think it was February, where the Whirling Spinsters highlighted their work with the International Wolf Center. So we're looking to have more of those kind of, innovative conversations where meeting on Zoom actually works out, because it's not as if they can bring the wolves here anyway. So just know that I definitely hear how much you want to see each other. I feel it when people come into the Guild. I feel it when people come in and tell me that it just feels so good to be there. So I absolutely hear you. Yes, I just need a little bit of time and leeway to make that happen. I'm going to check the chat for other questions. And if I don't see any more, then I'm going to do a drawing for a $25 gift cert. Must be in attendance to win. It is out of this fancy bowl. So the $25 gift cert is Connie Latendress. Are you still here, Connie? Speak now, or I will keep drawing. Oh, this, I feel like a teacher who's like checking to see if
I'm
the students
here.
have left. Oh, okay, all right, you get it then. All right, I was almost ready to move on. Okay, and then the next one is for a free 1-year membership. Sarah Peterson. And I think I see your name on the screen.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, team, I'll get you to those. In conclusion, I just want to thank everyone for coming to this meeting. I knew that we would have high attendance because all of you are so involved, and that's why our guild is so successful. So thank you for being here and have a great rest of the night.